Jack Alderman. His crime was he was convicted of murdering his wife, Barbara Alderman, in 1974. He was executed on September 16, 2008, and he was located at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison in Jackson, Georgia. He was executed by lethal injection, and he reportedly declined to give a final statement. However, his last meal was he was given a regular prison meal of baked fish, peas, coleslaw, carrots, cheese grits, a bun, fruit juice, and chocolate cake. Joe Arridy. He was wrongfully convicted of the rape and murder of a 15-year-old girl in 1936. He was executed on January 6, 1939, at the prison in Colorado State Penitentiary in Cannon City, Colorado. He was executed via the gas chamber. His last meal was a bowl of ice cream. His last words reportedly were, he smiled and showed little understanding of his fate. Specific last words were not documented. Maybe he didn't say anything. Sounds like a tragic story all the way around. Kenneth McDuff. He was convicted of multiple murders, including the infamous Broomstick Murders in 1966. He was executed on November 17, 1998, and he was located at the Huntsville unit of the prison system in Texas, in Huntsville, Texas. He was executed by lethal injection. His last meal, a hamburger fashioned to resemble his favorite fast food meal. I have no idea what that would be. His last words, "I'm ready to be released. Release me." Willie Tyrone Trottie. He was convicted of the murders of his ex-girlfriend, Barbara Canada, and her brother, Titus Canada. The crime occurred on May 3, 1993, when Trottie fatally shot both victims. He was executed on September 10, 2014, and he was located at the Huntsville unit in Texas, in Huntsville, Texas. He was executed by a lethal injection. Regarding his last meal, there were no specific details provided. His last words, "I love you all. Find it in your hearts to forgive me. I'm sorry. Stay strong. And Jesus, take me home." Louis Lepke Buchalter. He was an organized crime boss and the head of Murder, Inc., and was convicted of murder and racketeering, probably of many people. He was executed on March 4, 1944, and he was located at the Sing Sing prison in Ossining, New York. He was executed via the electric chair. He had no last words, and there was no details about any last meal. Next up is Ruth Snyder. She was convicted of murdering her husband, Albert Snyder, in 1927. She was executed on January 12, 1928, at the Sing Sing prison in Ossining, New York. She was executed in the electric chair. Her last words were, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And there were no details about a last meal for Ruth. Next up is Timothy Spencer, otherwise known as the Southside Strangler. He was convicted of raping and murdering 4 women in Virginia between 1987 and 1988. He was executed on April 27, 1994, at the Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia. He was executed via the electric chair, and he declined to make a final statement, but his last meal included spicy baked chicken, buttered rolls, peas with onions, a cherry cheesecake, and a Pepsi. Not bad. Next up, Harry Powers, otherwise known as the Lonely Hearts Killer. He was convicted of luring and murdering 2 widows and 3 children. He contacted them through personal ads. He was executed on March 18, 1932. He was in West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia. He was executed via hanging, and there was no record of any last meal. And his last words, "I think I deserve what I'm getting." Well, there you go. That's a sense of honesty. Cameron Todd Willingham. He was convicted of arson, resulting in the deaths of his 3 young daughters. He was executed on February 17, 2004, at the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. He was executed by a lethal injection. His last meal was he just went with the standard meal that all prisoners get. Nothing special. His last words, "I have been persecuted for 12 years for something I did not do." He also directed some vulgar comments towards his ex-wife, who was present. Next up is Elijah Page. He was convicted of the torture and murder of Chester Allen Pogue. He was executed on July 11, 2007, and he was at the South Dakota State Penitentiary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He was executed via lethal injection. He waived his right to a final statement. He also declined to have a last meal, even though he was offered the standard prison meal. Stanley Tookie Williams. As a side note before we get started, he was a co-founder of the Crips, which was a notorious street gang in L.A. In 1979, he was convicted of 4 murders during 2 separate robberies. He was executed via lethal injection on December 13, 2005, at the San Quentin State Prison in California. He did not request a special last meal. In the hours leading up to his execution, he only drank milk. His last words, even though they weren't necessarily last words, he says, "Are you guys doing that right?" as they were struggling to insert the IV lines. Frank Spisak. He was convicted of murdering 3 individuals in a series of shootings at the Cleveland State University. He was executed on February 17, 2011. He was located at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. He was executed via the lethal injection, and his last words was he quoted some Bible verses in German. I don't know German. And his last meal was spaghetti with tomato sauce, salad, chocolate cake, and coffee. Alfred Bourgeois. He was convicted of sexually abusing and murdering his 2-year-old daughter. He was executed on December 11th in 2020. He was located at the United States Prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. He was executed by lethal injection, and he maintained his innocence, stating that he did not commit the crime. His last meal, seafood stuffed mushrooms, fried shrimp Alfredo pasta, biscuits, and cheesecake from Red Lobster. Stephen Michael Woods, Jr. He was convicted in the capital murders of Ronald Whitehead, 21, and Bethina Brose, 19, on May 2, 2001, in The Colony, Texas. He was executed on September 13, 2011, and he was located at the Huntsville unit of the Texas prison system in Huntsville, Texas. He was executed via lethal injection. His last meal, he requested a substantial meal including 2 pounds of bacon, a large 4-meat pizza, 4 fried chicken breasts, 2 drinks of Mountain Dew, Pepsi, root beer, and sweet tea, 2 pints of ice cream, 5 chicken fried steaks, 2 hamburgers with bacon, fries, and a dozen garlic breadsticks with Mariana sauce on the side. Wow, that guy, he did it. All right, there you go. His last words, "You're not about to witness an execution. You're about to witness a murder. I am strapped down for something Marcus Rhodes did. I never killed anybody ever. I love you, Mom. I love you, Tally. This is wrong. This whole thing is wrong." Lisa Montgomery. She was convicted of strangling a pregnant woman and cutting the baby from that woman's womb. Man, that's bad. She was executed on January 13th, 2021. She was located at the U.S. prison Terre Haute in Terre Haute, Indiana. She was executed by a lethal injection. Her last word was no. Last meal was fried chicken, fried potatoes, and cola.